Hello, I'm Martin Fencka and welcome to the first episode of Let's Play Wartales. So Wartales is a medieval RPG game with a light fantasy touch where you are a leader of a mercenary group. So your goal is to lead your men into battle, develop their skills, gear them up, keep them fed, keep them happy, and well, some other things that we will check as we enter the game. If from what I said Wartales reminds you of Battle Brothers, then you are definitely correct. Those games are quite similar. Wartales is maybe a little bit more story driven than Battle Brothers, but if you like playing Battle Brothers, I think you will enjoy Wartales as well. Before we jump into the game, two things that I should probably say. One, Wartales is still in early access, so if you are not a fan of early access games, it's probably not something that you want to buy right away. But it's definitely worth at least keeping an eye on. And second, because this is the first episode and I've never played Wartales on this channel, there's going to be quite a lot of talking in this episode because I will try to cover at least the basic game mechanics and just talk a little bit about what's going on so that you guys also understand the game a little bit more as we go on. Okay. I think we can jump into the game. So as we hit a new game, there are a few things that we have to decide on. First, this is basically our initial company composition. We have 5 options, or is it 5? Yeah, it's 5 options. We would either start as apprentice friends looking for an adventure. There are some bonuses and penalties. We would start with some extra influence. I'll talk about that later. And we will have reduced experience. This is just the initial experience our characters start with. It doesn't affect how much experience we get later. So basically this means that we hit level 2 a little bit later, and well, it may not seem as much, but level 1 in this game is a pain in the ass, especially on the highest difficulty. So this is one option. Then men escorting merchants who lost their employer. Here we would start with some extra money, -1 medicine, which is not a huge deal to be honest. Starting composition, I forgot the starting composition. That's probably the most important thing from these options. The first one we would be going with a swordsman, archer, ranger, and brute. The second option, swordsman, warrior, spearman, and brute. Here I have a problem with this because we are not starting with either ranger or an archer, so a dexterity based characters. So this is not an option that I want to go with. Then the third option, deserters fleeing an abusive captain. Here we would have some extra experience, which is nice, but we would be starting with plus 30 suspicion. Suspicion is a mechanic that or you get suspicion points if you, for example, steal things, attack merchant caravans. So if you want to play the game basically as a brigand, you can, but you'll be gaining suspicion, and at a certain level the guards will start paying attention to attacking you. So yeah, if you want to play for the, let's say, evil side, brigand side, you can. Just makes the game more difficult because of course the law will be interested in you, and well, they are usually pretty well geared and quite strong, so I don't recommend this option for someone who is starting with the game. And I've never tried, and I think I won't try for a while because it's quite scary, to be honest. Starting composition would be swordsman, archer, ranger, and brute, which is pretty good, but again, I definitely don't want to get any suspicion, at least for now. Maybe I'll try at some point, but right now I'm just too scared of that. Another option, young farmers looking for a better life. Here we'll be starting with extra food, a little bit less money. And the starting composition would be brute to spearman and archer, which is quite weird. I'm not a big fan of spearman. And the last one, bandits looking to escape the guard. So here we would start on the evil side of things, let's say, right away with plus 65 suspicion, some extra money, and the composition brute, 2 rangers and archer, which is a little too like ranged heavy for me, or dexterity based characters heavy for me, because rangers are not exactly a ranged character in this game. They are more like the assassin type of build. Okay, so I'm going with the first option, apprentice friends looking for an adventure. Next option here, we decide on some bonuses that we're gonna start with. Again, 5 options. First one, we would be gaining fatigue slower, or reduced amount. We would be gaining less fatigue. Let's put it this way, which means we would be able to operate for longer before we have to rest, which is nice, but not a big deal. 10% is not that much. Cunning fighters would give us more experience from combat. Here, Constitution plus 10%. Constitution is one of the stats of your characters that determines how many hit points you have and also how much you can carry. It's not bad, but I think there is one better option. Also, I never felt like I didn't have enough hit points. I think having armor is a little bit more important than a ton of hit points, so I don't really like this option that much. The option that I want to go with is here. We are excellent at slap games. We gain 10% critical damage. You have two stats in this game that determine critical hits. One is critical hit stat that determines how likely it is that you're going to cause a critical hit. And if you do the critical hit, then you have critical damage modifier that determines how much damage you actually do. So this modifier increases the damage from critical hits by 10%. And the last option, you are quick learners, which increases the experience you get for professions. That's not your class. You are, for example, a swordsman as a class, and then you can be, for example, a blacksmith as a profession. You can choose that in the game, and this bonus would increase the pace at which your professions level up. So that's the second option. Here, as I said, we're going with the crit damage, and here we have to choose one penalty, again out of 5. First one, we have lowered the carrying capacity, not a huge deal. Second, reduce the troops' happiness by 1. This one isn't too bad if you are not planning to go with the large company. The larger company you have, the more happiness you need. So depending on what you want, this can be completely crippling or irrelevant. I want to go with a small company, so this wouldn't be a huge deal, but I'm not sure what I want to do in the late game, so I probably should avoid anything that reduces happiness. Next one, critical hit reduced by 3%, so this is the stat that determines if we do the critical hit. That's the one before the critical damage comes into play. So this one is pretty bad. Even 3% is noticeable, so definitely don't want this one. Then we have danger during rest increased by 10%, so it just increases the chance that something attacks us during a camp, and willpower reduced by 1. This just increases the likelihood that someone panics in combat when we suffer losses, but overall I'm trying to avoid losses as much as possible, so we could probably go with this one and we wouldn't feel it. But I think overall the less impactful is the first one. We can buy horses in this game that will carry stuff for us, so this carrying capacity is relevant mostly in the early game. Okay, so these are the options. Now we have to decide on the starting region. I only have one because I didn't really get that far into the game to unlock some more starting regions. And I'm not even sure that at this stage of the development there are even more than one starting regions available. And the difficulty of combat, and then the difficulty basically out of combat. So these are all of the options. Now we enter the game. I hope it won't take too long. It usually takes only a few seconds. It'll probably take a little bit longer as I'm recording, but it shouldn't be too bad. There we go. So at the beginning, your companions are off in search of adventure. After a few days of quietly traveling along, their only feed was not getting lost, and they have reached their destination. Here, Shirley awaits some novel and exciting quest that will stir up the uneventful lives of bored apprentices. Adventure awaits at the end of the road, for some who make it there alive, that is. Okay, start. Let's pause the game immediately. So here we are on the map. For now, we can only see a few things. This is our company. There are some collectibles on the map, some like crafting materials, and here we have one small group of enemies that we have to fight basically every single time. Is the first thing that happens. Before we do anything, let's check the interface, what we have here. Let's start in this corner. Here we have the happiness of the company. As long as it's 0 or higher, we are fine. There is 0 probability that someone leaves. If it drops under 0, then there is the the lower we are under 0, the higher chance that someone will leave the company, and it scales pretty quickly. So you want to stay above, or not above, at or above 0 at any cost. It's really important. People, once they are unhappy, they leave, and they leave pretty quickly. So you want to prevent that at all costs. Then influence. You get influence as you win fights, complete quests, and this is like a type of currency. For example, when you want to recruit someone, it costs you money, but it also costs you some influence. Also, during some quests, you are using this as basically currency for persuasion. So that's influence. Then you have valor points. Valor points are relevant for combat. They are like a currency for special attacks. I will explain that a little bit more as we enter first combat. Here we have food. You have to feed your people, of course, regularly. So here we can see that we have 24 units of food, which is currently enough for 4 days. And then we have gold. We have to pay our people every 3 days. Currently, they cost us 80 gold every 3 days. We have 100, so we need to get some money pretty quickly. And as usual, you get money from finishing quests, selling loot. There's like the usual stuff, basically. That's one side. On the other side, this is our company. I don't think there is anything that I really have to go through. If I click on it here, we can see our 4 characters. So we have our archer, swordsman, ranger, and brute. Plus we are starting with a pony. That increases our carrying capacity a little bit. And that's basically it, because you can have some animals that join combat, but like horses or ponies don't. So they're here really just to help us carry our gear around. Next we have knowledge, and this knowledge bar. So as we explore, as we craft, we get knowledge points, and when we fill this bar, we get a knowledge point. And for knowledge points, we can unlock some, for example, new recipes for crafting, or some, I don't know how I should call these, like perks that, for example, allow us to run on the world map or move faster. They make our people eat less food and all kinds of stuff that currently I'm not sure how good they are, because the difference is not that great. It's between 5 to 10% bonus, and you rarely feel it. Usually I just go with the reduced wages and maybe endurance training later. But it feels like these could use some buffs to really feel impactful and worth investing these points. You don't get that many knowledge points, and they unlock recipes for crafting. So it's almost always better to go with some more advanced crafting recipes than these perks. Currently, we only have one. How these called? Come on, words. One profession open, so there isn't really that much to see, but later we'll unlock more, like fishing, blacksmithing, cooking, herbalism, lockpicking, and some others that I forgot. And each of them has its own page with its recipes that you can slowly unlock through these points. So there is a lot to unlock in this game, and well, there's even like quite a few things missing to this system of professions, and well, it adds a lot to the game. This is something that I really like, because you can craft your own gear. You don't have to rely on what you find, what you can buy. You can just get your materials and craft what you need. As a blacksmith, you can craft your potions. You can craft your lockpick so that your thief can unlock chests. There is a lot. You can cook your food. That's pretty important. And it's so much better eating cooked food than just raw meat that drops So cooking at some point becomes pretty relevant as well. Maybe why I like these professions is because you can really feel the difference when you unlock something new. Then it's pretty noticeable for the gameplay. So that's professions. Here, this is... there is always like a quest line in each region in the game. It's not really a direct quest line, it's just to give you an example. In this region, there are refugees coming, and you either help the refugees to be accepted into this region, or you help the original inhabitants of this region to get rid of the refugees. And every time you make a step towards one side, you get points in this bar. And when it fills up, the scenario, that's the best way how to describe it, not quest, a scenario. When you fill up this bar, you solve the scenario. So as we progress through the main scenario of this region, this bar will be filling up. And then we have suspicion. As you, I don't know, attack caravans, steal stuff, suspicion goes up, and here is the breakpoint, I think, where the guards start attacking you, and we will try to keep this at 0 as much as we can. Okay, anything else down here? Here we can set up a camp, we'll get to that later. This is our inventory. For now we just have food, some medicine, and raw materials. Those are for repairing our gear. Compendium, I've already shown that. Then we have a map, so for now we don't really see anything. And last thing, we have pods. So as you play the game, with basically everything you do in the game, you get points. If you win a fight, you get a certain points towards, let's say, power and magic. And again, you are filling this bar, and as you level up through these different paths, it unlocks like more options. Here it unlocks a new crafting recipe, and with that a new profession. Here, as you get to level 2, you get access to a new type of missions. When you level through trade and wealth, then you can start negotiating how much you get for contracts. From power of might, maximum valor points, that's this, increases by 1. That's pretty relevant. But this is not something that you really focus on that much. It slowly levels up as you play the game. You can probably play in a way that you focus on one of these trees more, but I never really felt the need. So it's nice that you have these things here and that you get the bonuses, but it's nothing that you really keep an eye on. Okay, let's get out of the map. Now we can check our characters before we start moving. I think it's enough to just check one. So here it's our level 1 archer that has 15 hit points, 5 armor. Excuse me. Here we have the chest armor that's giving us those 5 points. A bow. You get skills that are like tied to a character, and then you get skills that are tied to a weapon. So with improvised bow, we get the shoot capacity, which deals 4 to 8 damage to the target to 8 meters distance. As we change the type of bow that we equip, then we get different skills. So it kind of matters what type, not just the weapon, but what type of bow even you equip. Some of them give you like pushback, others give you a chance to shoot twice after crit. So you want to pay attention to what exactly each weapon does. Here are our skills, and as I was talking about the valor points, these points here, and I was talking about them unlocking like special abilities. So here, if we spend 1 valor point, we can activate the deftness, which increases the range of our next attack to double. So for 1 valor point, we can increase our range to double for 1 attack. Early, these are not that strong, but later valor points are like combat deciding, or they unlock combat deciding abilities. So it's pretty important to manage your valor points really well. Injuries and status for now, nothing. If you take a lot of damage, like your hit points drop under certain threshold, I think it's like 1/3, then you get injured after combat, and injuries are sort of permanent until you spend a medicine and get rid of them. So they last between combats if you can't heal them. Here we have experience, so we need 190 experience to get to level 2, and then our stats, strength 4, basically irrelevant for an archer. Dexterity, that's the main stat for an archer, decides damage. It scales your damage like proportionally. The more dexterity, the more damage. For basically 1 point of dexterity, you gain 1 point of damage. Then we have Constitution, that dictates how many hit points we have, movement points, willpower, critical hit, and from critical hit, this is a chance that we deal a critical hit, and if we do, then we have 35% critical damage modifier, so our critical hits do 35% more damage. Here is how much the character costs us every 3 days, how much food she eats, and her carrying capacity. It's really not that much. Most of our carrying capacity really comes from the pony. And then we have traits. She has night vision, so sees better in the dark. That shows that night and day cycle is a thing in this game. I want to check the other characters, what traits we have. Hardworking earns 5% more professional experience. This one is really not that relevant. That's our swordsman. Volunteer, wages reduced by half. Who cares? Bloodthirsty, critical hit increased by 3%. That's a really good one. Unfortunately, it's on a wrong character. This is gonna be our tank, so we don't really care about his critical hit chance. We wanted this probably on the ranger. That's a character that will be mostly focused on critical hits. So the traits that this company got are pretty much all useless. That's unfortunate. But well, you can't always get the best things. Now, I'm planning to play this series with the 5-man company, at least for a long time. I want to stick to 5-man. We have only 4, and I want to get a specific class as the first character. So I will save the game here. We're gonna call this LP. And I'm gonna check the closest village, the only village in this region where there are recruits. And if we don't get the one class that I need, it's 50% chance. If we don't get it, I'm going to reload. Because it's quite important that we get the composition that I need. We are playing on the highest difficulty, and having the correct setup for your company is quite important. Makes fights a little bit more manageable. So this is one reload that I will do. It kind of sucks that you can't get or don't have the option to at least pick your first recruit from all classes. There are not that many, so I don't see the reason why I have to choose from 3 classes instead of like 5 or 6. But well, we'll just do it and see what we get. Unfortunately, before we get into the village, we have to fight the first fight. It just takes a few minutes. So here we can explain how the fighting works. And maybe once we get into the village, before I reload, we can just end the episode. I think it's enough talking for one episode. So here we are starting. Blue characters, that's ours. Red characters, that's the enemy. We can see 1 melee, 1 ranged. You can just click on them, check their skills, check how far they move. Basically anything about the enemy is known to you. You just click on the enemy and you can read through everything. So that's nice that you have access to all of this information before the fight starts. You can decide on your positioning and everything. We want to do... also this is a turn order. I'm not sure how it's generated because there is nothing like initiative. So I guess it's generated randomly. or is may no, I don't think it's based on like movement speed or anything, but you can see at which order the characters move, at least the enemy. For you, you can pick any character you want, and so you can move in any order. So we want to start with this guy. We want to lock him in combat, and then we want to lock the archer in combat. When I say locking something in combat, what I mean by that, when the enemy is engaged in melee, so the first character that engages it becomes locked in like a duel. And the enemy is forced to attack the character that is engaged with, unless he decides to disengage and take an attack of opportunity. I'll show you. We still didn't start the fight. Until first character moves, we can reposition our people. So I want our swordsman, because he has a shield, to engage enemy, the enemy melee character, the hoodlum. So we move to him. You can see the range of our movement. There isn't a zone of control. Until you engage, you can move around enemy units as much as you want. But with the first attack, you can see now by this icon, these two characters are now engaged in combat. If we wanted to move, we would first have to disengage. He would get an attack of opportunity, but then we would be able to freely move around him. So that's one guy taken care of, at least for now. There will be enough. Who goes first, by the way? He goes first, so I can't kill him before he moves, which means I will take the attack from him no matter what. So I will ignore him for now, end the turn of my swordsman, and switch to my ranger. And my ranger, if he can get there, yeah, he can get there, will engage the poacher. If archers are not engaged in combat, they will shoot, and when they are shooting, they're doing much more damage than their melee attacks do. So you want to lock the enemy archers in combat as soon as possible, so that you basically neutralize them. When this guy shoots, he's probably gonna do like 3 to 6 damage. Yeah, on level 1, so the damage is not that crazy, but later it scales pretty quickly. In melee, he's probably gonna do like 1 damage with a punch. So even our lightly armored characters are good enough to engage the archer. We can stab him. And now the rest will focus on the hoodlum, take care of him. During that time, our ranger will tank those slabs from the archer. And now he attacks for 4 damage. As you can see, our armor is taking damage first. Once they get through the armor, then we'll start taking damage into hit points. There are some attacks that ignore armor and go directly into your hit points, but there are not that many. So for what I've seen, it's better to focus on your armor than just boost your constitution. There are like poisons and traps that ignore armor, but they usually don't do that much damage. You can avoid or heal most of it. So yeah, we'll be focusing on armor a lot more than on constitution. Now, our archer is going to move next. And we have to be careful with that, because line of sight is a thing. You can hit your own characters. Let's see. I'm not sure. Actually, I am pretty sure that we won't have 100% chance. Actually, no, we do have 100% chance to hit the enemy. I thought that there will be a small chance to hit our own guy. Well, this is fine. Okay, great. Let's hit him. That was a crit, so you can see that we did more damage. We don't need the aim. Here we are just going with basic attacks. We don't really need to activate any abilities that would cost valor points. We have a two-handed mace here. I really don't like two-handed maces in this game. They have AoE attack, and they're quite hard to control, because even with melee attacks, you can hit your own people. So let's see, if we move here, we can do it. Actually, no matter how I attack, I won't hit our own guy. So this time it works, but you have to be careful with two-handed weapons. Yeah, we definitely want to switch to one-handed mace and shield as soon as possible. And our how they call tugs? No, not tugs, brutes. I want to have 2 brutes, and they will be our tanks. Shield, heavy armor, one-handed mace. They still can do a pretty high damage, and from what I've seen, they might be the best tanks. They have one-handed maces have an ability that applies weakness, which is perfect for a tank. So you attack, then you activate Valor attack that applies weakness, and you have heavy armor, so the damage is reduced by the armor. So they really don't take that much damage. Okay, now this is turn 2, so new initiative. Can we finish him off with 1 attack? Not with that. Not with that. Not with that. Or actually, it's 4 to 7, so it's quite likely that we actually kill him with this shot. Unless we do minimal damage. Never mind. Oh, and we can move after attacking. I really like it. You don't even have to move and shoot and attack in like specific order or spend all your movement at once. You can move a little bit, attack, and then move, so you can like get closer to the enemy, shoot him, and then retreat. That's great, because that gives your archers so much more flexibility and safety. Here we are done. I guess our swordsman... Actually, no, I don't want our swordsman to get the kill. You get experience from combat overall, and then you get extra experience for kills. And I want the extra experience to go to our future tank. I want our tank to get to level 2 as soon as possible. It's crucial in the early game, at least from what or how I'm playing the game, to get one tank to level 2 as soon as possible and get him a level 2 weapon. So that's that. Now we take the punch for actually 2 damage. Oh, and then we got galvanization. So if you start winning a fight, at certain point, this bar gets over this threshold, and then your people become galvanized and start doing more damage. If you cross the second threshold, the enemy starts fleeing, and at that point you have won the game, but you can still finish off all of them. Also, another thing here is flanking. It's not that important for a swordsman, but for example for a ranger who later becomes a proper assassin, it's pretty important to attack from behind. He gets extra damage. And also you can surround the enemies. If you have 3 people in melee range, then the enemy becomes surrounded and starts taking more damage. So there's a lot of like tactics involved in fighting, and later fights are pretty difficult, so it's important to properly check like the initiative, which targets you engage, your positioning on the field, which attacks you are using, how you spend valor, and yeah, fighting. I really like fighting in the game, even though it becomes quite repetitive. There are not that many enemies in the game yet. It's still enjoyable, even though you are fighting like 5 or 6 type of enemies over and over again. I never felt bored, and I've done at this point probably hundreds of fights. That's pretty impressive. So I don't mean how many fights I've done. I mean it's impressive that after doing so many fights, I'm still not bored. Like, how engaging the fight is, even though we are fighting the same thing over and over again. Okay, we are poisoned. That's this icon. So we took 1 hit point of damage, but you heal your hit points in between fights. So unless you suffer an injury, it doesn't really matter if you lose hit points. Of course, it's 1 hit point, but we can finish him off before he can move again, or her. There is the kill. And that's it. So pretty simple combat. We didn't really get anything, no items at all. But this was a perfect fight to explain how fighting works. And I think at this point, most things are actually covered. There are professions later. Each profession works in like a mini game, or most of them work like a mini game. So they're kind of fun. Things like fishing, blacksmithing, mining, each have its own mini game, so we'll cover that as well. But like the major mechanics, I think, are covered. We got 31 experience here, 9 influence, 2 bodies. You can become a cannibal in this game if you want. You have to unlock it through compendium. Here, cannibalism for 1 point. You can start eating people. I'm not sure if it has any disadvantages. It probably does. I've never tried. So there's gold. And here you can see that our gear was damaged. So here the shield got damaged and the armor got damaged. Now, how repairs work. Each raw material, currently we have 15. We can split the stack. So 1 raw material can repair 10 points of armor. But it counts for each item individually. So to repair the shield, we need 1 raw material. So it's not worth repairing the shield that only has 2 points with something that repairs 10 points. Raw materials cost money, and we have to be very careful how we spend our money early. So I'm not going to be repairing our shield. Our armor lost 2 points. And again, it's not worth spending a whole 1 raw material worth 10 armor points on just 2 missing points. So I'm not repairing this. It's not worth it. To fully repair it, I would have to burn 20 points worth on just 4 missing points. That's a waste. The other one is missing 3 points. Again, not worth it. These early armors don't really have that many points. So unless they're fully destroyed, like I would consider, or I would repair 8-point armor that's fully destroyed. At that point, it is worth it. You are only wasting like 2 points. But until that happens, it's just a waste, basically. Plus, we can pay a blacksmith to repair this small damage for much better ratio than we would be paying with the materials. Okay. So that's that. We can pick up the materials. These are crafting materials that we can find in the world. There was 1 iron ore, but I said that I wanted to check the village. So the village is up here. For now, the map is always the same. The game doesn't have a randomly generated maps yet. Hopefully they will add it at some point. It would be great. It would add so much replayability. The replayability is already great, but with randomly generated maps, it would be amazing. So here we have the village there. I should probably pause the game because not wasting time is also important. In this game, time is money. This is a small village where we have basically only 5 buildings. This is a town hall. Nothing there. There is just 1 NPC that we can talk to. We can do that later. It's not important right now. Marketplace, mostly for trading food. Apothecary, there is a crafting table for potions. A blacksmith, there we can repair things. And there is an anvil for blacksmithing, for crafting new items. And then we have an inn that we're going to enter first. There's an innkeeper, then some NPCs that we're gonna check later. For now, I'm only interested in these 3, and I'm hoping that one of them is a brute. Ranger, warrior, brute. Oh, there we go, perfect. So we have access to a second brute with 5% constitution. For brutes, for tanks, that's actually a relevant stat, not the best one, but it is relevant. So finally someone with a useful trait. The important thing though here is that we do have a brute, so I'm going to reload anyway. We will start next time. Can I do it from here? No, I can't. But next time we'll once again start where I saved the game, so even before the first fight probably, and have like a proper start, because there are a few things that I now want to do before we get into the village. So when we are leaving the village, we'll already be leaving with 5 characters. Okay, so I think that's it for the first episode. I hope it wasn't too much information. But even if it was, as we start playing, everything is very easy to understand. It only took me like, I don't know, 20 minutes of playing without checking any guides or anything to like understand what I'm supposed to do. And then after 2 or 3 attempts where I just tested things, what is effective, what is not, I was able to play the game without too many problems. And as I said, I'm enjoying the game so far, so I hope you'll enjoy it as well, as a Let's Play series, and I hope that you're going to join me for the next episode again. Until then, have a good time. Bye bye.